It is a selection from a nation which has volunteered in mass.
When came a knock on the door, your voice commanded the war. No, Captain, please, here on my knees, I plead for one I adore. Don't take my darling for your praise from me. Don't let it walk too far.
A bit of a challenge to enforce a draft on citizens that you can't necessarily even find or identify or measure. There are no social security numbers. No one has a passport, really. So it's very easy to evade the draft simply by not registering. The slang term during the war for a draft dodger is a slacker. And the slacker becomes the most controversial figure on the home front. The waterfront in Hoboken is the kind of place where you might find slackers.
It would be a mistake, wouldn't it, to imagine that there was paid government federal agents rounding up these slackers.
So the system of enforcement looks like a police state, except there aren't any actual police in it. The predecessor organization to what becomes the FBI had only 300 agents in it. So what emerges is the American Protective League. This is a voluntary association that by the war's end, about 250,000 people have joined. Most of them are men over draft age or exempted from the draft who kind of want to do their part to police the home front, to fill the ranks of the army. In a place like Hoboken, they would have these coordinated efforts to surround any place where they thought large numbers of young men, and in particular young men of dubious loyalty or dubious citizenship, and they would just circle them and demand to see their draft registration cards.
Vigilantes lynched those suspected of disloyalty. German books were burned. Some states banned the speaking of German, even on the telephone. This was an era in which people had a far more stringent sense of their obligations to their society than they do today. That could be inspiring, but as it so often does, war brought out the worst as well as the best in people.
Kansas, April 26, 1918. Join the Night Riders. Our motto, True Blue Americans. Our aim is to clean up the county of German spies, German sympathizers, and dirty slackers. We are now among you, and know all of those who are secretly traitors to the country. And these parties may expect a visit from us. There is no neutral ground. You are either for or against the government. Line up and get right.
You are going to lick the world, you say you will. If you mean Uncle Sam, now listen, Kaiser Bill. Tell that to the Marines.
For a lot of the doughboys, this would have been the biggest trip they'd ever taken in their lives. Boarding a ship in Hoboken meant that you had already seen a lot of new things and you were about to go someplace completely unknown that had been all over the newspaper, that you had talked about and thought about for a few years. The average doughboy was in his early 20s, was 5'6" tall, about 135 pounds, about my size, basically. You were going there with not a lot of training, maybe about 6 weeks.
They come from every quarter, from the north, south, east, and west, to clear the way for freedom for the land we love the best. We left our occupation and home so far and dear, but when the going's rather rough, you raise a song of cheer. Good morning.
In total, nearly 3 million men were drafted. This new national army reflected America. Led by white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, it included Catholics and Jews and immigrants from many nations, and it was, of course, racially segregated. It was led by General John J. Pershing, who was determined to command a unified American army, resisting all efforts by the Allies to incorporate his forces with theirs.
Imagine going out from here. You would have turned past some of the tallest buildings in the world, clustered in lower Manhattan, nothing that you'd seen in your hometown. And then as you moved out of New York Harbor, one side you would have seen the Statue of Liberty, symbol of French and American relations, and this gift from France to the United States.
And taking the doughboys to France were German passenger liners, marooned in the docks in Hoboken.